So let's take care of the section view and put it someplace more appropriate. Now, I can't take it and move it right now because it's locked to the view. It's going to say, oh, you put it here. It's got to be in line with the view. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to right click on this. I'm going to go to alignment. I'm going to break alignment, which means now I can drag it to wherever I want. So I'm going to take this now. Let's just drag it over here. Notice it's already labeled section AA because that's identifying it. It is section AA. And so once again, let's take a look at this. That crosshatch means that on that cut, that's where we have material. Notice these are voids because those are circular holes that we're cutting through. Here's the circular main chamber. So right along that line, we have material, and that's great. And typically you could sit here and dimension to any of these now because these are now hard edges. They are tangent edges that we can use. The next thing is, the entire reason I put this in is I want to take and I want to be able to dimension that little chamfer. The problem is that chamfer is pretty small. It'll be difficult to see. So what I want to do is I want to make what's called a detail view. And a detail view is going to be a view that typically is scaled up, so it's a little bit easier to see. So we're just going to start the detail view, and we're going to make a circle that'll go to here. And then I'll drop this here. So now I have a detail view. That scales 4:3. You can change the name of the view here. You've got all this stuff. We're going to use a custom scale. We're going to make this, let's say, instead of 4:3, let's make it 3:1 and see how that looks. There we go. So we got a view that's a little bit bigger now. And so we're going to go and we're going to end up dimensioning to that. Okay, so we're almost ready to actually do the detailing. One thing I do want to do is let's drop the center marks in here. Now this time, you'll notice that I'm just clicking on the place where the center marks belong, and it goes, oh, yeah, I can see those two lines. That's a circle. And so now we have everything put together. So actually, let's start actually detailing things. So a couple things to note about detailing. It's always about size and position. So every single feature that you have on a part, you have to be able to define its size, its height, width, length, but you have to also define where it's located. So in the circular part, it's a little bit easier just because everything's going to be pretty much defined along that center point of our part. Now you can import dimensions straight from your model and move them around. You can do that using the techniques they show you in the book. I'm actually going to show you, we're going to just build the dimensions in a more traditional manner where we're just going to actually just do each one individually. Okay, so let's start. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into Smart Dimension. And I want to start defining the overall dimensions. So what I want to do is I want to do the overall diameter of this because that is the one overall dimension. And then I want to get the overall height. And since the diameter kind of eliminates the length and width, so we can come here and just click on that outside circle and it will drop the dimension down for us. Now, depending on what you're looking to do, we can change how the dimension looks, where the leaders are, and the leader lines are the lines that go up to the dimension, whether they're inside or outside. We have options that we can play with here to make things look better, because everything with dimensioning is going to look, you want to make it look as clear as possible. And so as we're looking at this, if we're going to keep this dimension in this frame, well, dimensions on the inside look a little bit messier. So if you look here with the leader lines, you've got a bunch of different ways you can do it. Typically like having it here where we're dealing with just the leader on the outside. And so you can see that dimension comes and it points right to it. And So as we played with those options, we've got now the diameter pointing to the outside diameter. Now, one thing I do notice is that it's a straight line here. Now, that's typical for European Stein drawings, but in the United States, we use an ANSI standard, so I believe SolidWorks has defaulted to an ISO standard. So if we right-click on Flange here over in our feature manager, which will bring up all of our options, we can go to Document Properties. We can go to the Drafting Standards, and we can see that our drafting standard is ISO. So what I want to do is let's change that to ANSI, hit OK. And so now you see the leader line is now bent to where the diametric dimension is now shown horizontally, which is more typical of what we see in the United States. Still gives us the same thing, tells us that outside diameter is there. You can see that little circle with the slash through it. That's the diametric symbol, which means that we're talking about a round part. Now, so this dimension has been created within the drawing itself and is not created from the model, because we can come in and go to model items here. We can import the dimensions right from the model, and then we can use that and move those dimensions around where we want. Once again, that's described more fully in the textbook. Typically, depending on your company, they may or may not want you using model dimensions on the drawing, because the model dimensions on the drawing, they're the model dimensions. So therefore, they will drive the model. So if you change that dimension on the sheet, it will change it on the model. So that's great, right? If I'm going to make a change, I can make it here and I'll update in the model. Yes, that's a wonderful thing with it. I know that with the companies I worked for, they did not want people changing things at the drawing, because you would see weird things happen in the model in an assembly and whatnot. They wanted everything changed at the model level. So what I'm showing right here is how to do what are called driven dimensions, which means that as you change the model, the drawing will automatically update, but you make the changes just in the model itself. Depending on how you want to do it, that's really going to be all up to you. Actually, the whole ISO ANSI thing, another thing that should have tipped me off, but I wasn't paying attention, you'll notice before the arrows showed kind of pushing the cut line, where in the ANSI drawing, they are pulling the cut line. So we've made that change. So let's go and start dimensioning the rest of this guy here. So that's my one outside dimension. Let's do one more, and that's going to be, let's get the heights down here. So I'm going to go into Smart Dimension. I'm going to go into my side view, and I want to get the thickness of this flange. Now notice that it automatically goes, oh, you want to do the outside diameter dimension. And it also has that diametric symbol in there because I've only picked one line. I'm going to pick the other one, and with Smart Dimension, it goes, oh, okay, so you want 0.75. So the way dimensioning works, detailing works with the ANSI standards, is basically everything's supposed to be clear. Everything's a set distance away from parts and whatnot. Everything's kind of centered. So you'll notice that when I originally clicked this other guy here, you see how I've got these two little half circles here. So that's the part of the quick dimension formatting. And so it's saying I can either put it to the left-hand side or the right-hand side. If I just click on that, that drops my dimension where it should be. It centers it. It makes things look pretty. Things are not going to overlap. So we'll do the same thing with the overall height. And I'm going to do the same thing here and click on it and see how it automatically offsets the next dimension so they're not on top of each other. And it's easy to read. So using the quick formatting will really help quite a bit. And so those three dimensions there pretty much bound the entire size of the overall part. And so what we're going to need to do now, though, is I still have to do those chamfers, I have to do all those holes, I have to do the center post that's coming up. And so we're going to move on and do those next.